our calendar. Um, Thank you, Josh. I'll just make sure that's okay. Yep. So we'll record this and then chuck it up so that you can go back and so forth. Everything that I'll present, I'll put into the page and give everyone access to it or flick it off to you as I've already done, just so you've got it. You can use it as a template or whatever moving forward. So this is the second to last week of dealing or sitting under the kaupapa of Tomokana. Once we head into spring, when we're going to kind of slowly move into the R-tier phase of our framework. And what you'll find is these case studies are dealing with the R-tier and the whare component of our framework. Okay? So you'll see things come out of that, whether it's in the rubric, marking rubric that I've developed, or the handout. You'll see, oh yeah, there's a clear trail of moving through. So we're going to be starting to move away. Well, not necessarily moving away, but just transitioning into, metaphorically, we're standing on the R tier and just thinking about how do we deal with different take that's laid down before us, and what are some of the drivers and what some of the environmental conditions. Trying to understand what your center of gravity is. If you don't know what that term is, it'll come up in my corridor today. It's basically at the heart of it is understanding your mission and purpose. Is that main thing, that kaupapa that you're about. And so we're going to go through pretty much from the 1st of September all the way to the case studies in November. That's going to be our R-tier, Te Ara o Te Take phase of our learnings. And then over Raumati and autumn will be the whare. In other words, you'll be the realization of your summer projects or your workplace activities that people are doing. Kapai? Is that right? Okay. So let's get into our tonight's kaupapa. So I wanted to give you an example of the types of things that I'm looking for in relationship to the case studies. Remember I said right at the start, one of our aromato way, one of our assessments is to have a 15-minute presentation on a leader of your choice, and there are a set of questions or a set of areas that we're looking for you to explore in relationship to reflecting on the Ngā Pauamori framework and what that leader has done. It can be someone from the past, it can be someone that's present, it can be in the Christian sector, it can be in the secular sector, it's your choice and whom you're wanting to pick. The only thing that you'll need to kind of have as you're preparing your kōrero is the marking rubrics, which I'll give you. So you've got an idea of the types of things that I'm looking for or wanting to make sure when I'm hearing you talk about your particular leader, there's a bit of a focal point on that. And we'll talk about that after I've done my presentation. Okay. So we'll just now switch through to do that, and I'll just bring up the slides. So everything from now on until I've done the presentation, this is what I'm kind of looking for. Yeah. When it comes to your presentation. So I'll just share that now, Josh. And wrong one. Wrong one. Oh, yeah. Is it that one? Yeah. Okay. Okay, this slide and presentation I'm doing with will come up over now. There's some things happening in the background for Joseph and I and Joshua and Caleb that these days may change. But as we're planning at the moment and to our calendar, you're all going to be doing your 15-minute presentation with a 5-minute question around these dates here from the 10th through to the 28th of November of this year. Okay. So this one here is a exemplar. Yep. So case study, he tauira. Okay. So in this case study, ka tuka te mihi kia koutou, e te whānau, greetings to everyone that's joining us today. These are the areas that I'll be addressing through my case study. You'll see these on the handout that I've developed for you as well, that you'll see. Motorbike to go. But we're going to look, I've identified a particular leader, and we're going to set that leader into the environmental context or their center of gravity of where they have served or have had influence. We're going to address some of the leadership traits and skills that this person has shown and exhibited over their lifetime. I'm going to quickly address how they build teams and the way they went about building teams or team leadership. We'll think about leadership strategies. So this is the whare side of things, of our framework. We'll look at what has been the lasting impact or the legacy from there, the whakarerenga from her time. And then I've got some references and then the 5-minute quarter time after, so Q&A. Okay, so that's a bit of a brief on where we're going. Ai, anei te whae o te motu nei. I have chosen to have a look at Dame Whina Cooper. I was a very young boy when I saw her walking around the country back in the mid-70s. But her lifespan was from 1895 to 1994. I remember the interview that she had with Holmes on Paul Holmes show one year, and the massive impact that she had across the world and across Aotearoa. So let's have a look at her from a leader and the environmental situation that we find ourselves. The catch cry for her mission and her purpose and her kaupapa was not one more acre. So the theme, the kaupapa, the framing, the orientation of her activity was this statement here. Dame Whina Cooper grew up, was in a little place called Northern Hokianga, Te Arawa. She was known as Te Whae o Te Motu or Whae Whina, and was a queer and advocate of Māori rights, particularly around land issues. The environmental context that she found herself in, or her centre of gravity, is that by the mid-1970s, through the 19th century and the 20th century, land alienation was rampant across Aotearoa, New Zealand. It was through the 70s that we saw a resurgence and a renaissance of Māori identity, Māori issues, te riti o Waitangi, te reo, and intensifying urbanisation and activation of Māori across the country. This led her in 1975 to lead the Māori Land March from Te Hāpua to the Parliament down in Wellington. This land march was named Te Rōpū o Te Matakite, and it means those with foresight. Key moments in time. The land march was seen as the hikoi. It started in September 14th, 1975, and they arrived at Wellington on the 13th of October, 1975. And arriving at Parliament with some 5,000 people, with a petition signed by 60,000 signatories saying no, no, not one more acre to be sold. So that's who we're dealing with. Whina Cooper, a prominent lady, queer from the far north, like many activists of that period of time. You had a number of folk up and down the country that were standing up for Māori rights, and so I've chosen Whina Cooper. Dame Whina Cooper. And leadership skills. Or skills. The key memorable statement of this time, and I remember seeing them going over the Harbour Bridge, and this is the shot of what the motorway coming off the Harbour Bridge. So this is the northern side of the Harbour Bridge back in 1975. The gathering call and catch cry, the main thing that people had foresight for or vision for was that statement, stop land loss, was really the big thing. And you saw chants, you saw gatherings at the local marae. Along the way in the journey down from up north, they would stop and tell their story and advocacies and encouraging people to join in to the process. So vision was captured around this statement. It was also captured around two other artifacts that were used, was the haki and the po whenua. And those who have seen recent documentaries around this or the recent movie that's come out, you'll see those features in there. One of the things that she exhibited really well was this idea of our role as kaitaki or kaitakitanga of the kaupapa. Whereas the younger lot tend to be more of the actions on in relationship to logistics and travel plans. So she really held and captured this idea of holding the land, no more to be sold. And her message all the way through it is that this kaitakitanga process of land stewardship amongst our people. She held mana and a moral authority. So at the time, she was 79 years old. She was wrapped in her korowai, and we remember her walking up from Hapua with her moko. There's a classic photo, which I do have here, of her walking and starting the land march out all the way down to government. And so this moral courage that she had, this moral authority about not selling land and leaving land in Māori hands. This kaitiaki manifestation culminated, as I said earlier, of 5,000 people meeting in Wellington, and people from all walks of life participated in the hikoi, or the land march down to Wellington. Courage and stamina. Whew, man. It wasn't really something that was favourable in the public eye. Even Matiu Rata had at odds with her in the early stages of the land march, but she eventually won him over. But her courage and her stamina, a 79-year-old woman taking a stand, and as other documentaries have said, I don't think we'll ever see something like this, really, even in our modern context, because the way she did it was building unity, building kotahitanga, and clear communication. This march was for a month. She fronted media, she fronted cabinet members, she fronted people at the marae, kaumātua and queer, young generations and old. She was really the front of the whole process, that figurehead that headed up the land march. And she kept part of their process for the courage and stamina space, in her kōrero and communication methods. She was able to keep focus. The issue was about the land and the loss of the land. And despite political nuances of the day, despite developers of the day, she kept focus on that. And that became the rally cry for a lot of people around her, of that process of keeping things simple. This meant that her communication style, particularly when they stopped and overnighted on the marae, they would have forum discussions around what's going on and local issues. But the focal point was to keep it simple, a repeatable message that wherever they went, they kept repeating the same thing. Whoever they were speaking to, they repeated the same thing. Nice and simple, not one more acre. And slowly over time, as that message got out, more and more people gathered around her. And these were confirmed at the nightly hui on marae, up and down the country on the way down, with the purpose. Clarify the purpose, keep clear communication, and build unity through that purpose. So we get this building up of relationships, this coalition of networks that started to develop. She brought together rural and urban Māori, Pākehā supporters, different regional and national political leaders. She just had something about her that just won people over. She could be tough and very forthright, but as she ended up being known for, and hearing her on Paul Holmes' show, she became the mother of our nation, which was a lovely tribute to her. But they also used symbolism, and the symbolism came through the pou whenua and the haki, which we'll see before. And that was a unifying feature that they used and employed to develop the relationships that were going on at the time. And lastly, strategic timing. Just a little while after the land march, we saw the formation at the sponsorship of Maturata, Te Tiriti o Waitangi Act, the Treaty of Waitangi Act, and the tribunal came out of that process. And the legacy that she had left behind is all of a sudden you had this voice, this collective voice of Māori and other interested parties around justice, mana motuhake, Te Tiriti o Waitangi, and honouring the Treaty of Waitangi, that really birthed pretty much from 1975 all the way through to the Waitangi Te Reo Māori Act, the Waitangi Te Reo Māori land claim, where you saw a whole lot of other activities and protests and Marsden Point, for example, were all modelled after this hikoi that she had headed up. Team leadership. Now, I found this very fascinating. This is that photo I mentioned. We see her mana and storytelling, narratives. The ability to build teams through clear stories, clear understanding what's going on, and her process was to delegate or distribute leadership from a kaumātua who maintained the narrative and tikanga to the younger generation and those who are participating in organisation. For example, tama poata, and others who did the day-to-day logistics and travel plans and safety plans and so forth, and gathered all the signatories. So you had quite a big team that she was overseeing and looking after, and this process of being able to delegate things to different people. But her role was that figurehead. She maintained the stories, and with her and the kaumātuas that were there, maintained the tikanga of the process. Okay. Marae-based engagement. So this is where I talked about earlier about your center of gravity. Your center of gravity is the thing that, if that's taken away, your mission fails. So it's the ability to understand what your purpose is and the clarity of that purpose and the environmental conditions that you're working in. And so for the success of the hikoi, yes, we're going from Te Hapua down to Wellington, but the engagement process was through the marae in the evenings. And that became a crucial cog in her centre of gravity activities in regards to the ability of communicating, having a hawhau people participating, and hearing the stories and the narratives that's going on. Because along the way, they picked up signatories. Along the way, they also heard land issues that were going on at the day in that period of time, and were able just to pull them all together. So each stop involved pōwhiri, kōrero, petition signing, and that enabled, particularly around the marae-based engagement, it was able to sustain the moral standing and the mana of the kaupapa. They were also able to share resources, and there was also a willing for local participation and ownership of the kaupapa as well, through the ability of providing leadership as she did. You also have code of conduct and discipline. The artifacts, and we mustn't forget the importance of artifacts and how they carry the story and they carry the kaupapa they were doing. And they only had two: the haki, the single lone flag, and the pouwhenua. And this was a deliberate decision by Whina Cooper and the team. They avoided banners and other flags and other signs because they wanted the pouwhenua and the haki to keep the focus on land issues. And so they're very pointed at, unlike what you see today. Every Tom House and everybody else participates in a protest, and you got flags from Tikbantu and here and there and everywhere. And so you get this competing kaupapas and often other agendas happening in there. And so sometimes you're not going, what's this about? Yeah, so that was something very significant and a deliberate intention. So they kept the focus and their own code of conduct, and the discipline around what they were doing. It meant that they kept their message clear, unified, and singular. Now, as I said earlier, Whina Cooper, you couldn't bully her around. One of the things that she had to work with and through were the tensions in order to maintain kotahitanga. Those were tensions with some of her own people. There were tensions, as I said earlier, her and the Māori ministers, Māori Affairs Minister Maturata at the time, didn't necessarily get on very well at the start. But once they talked a lot and got through some of the issues that were laid on the table, they came to a consensus and were able to work through those issues. So that's one of the things that you once the take is laid down on the table, you've got to bring people all along the same vision, the same purpose, and find ways of actually how we build this collaborative network of the organisation, and the purpose of what we're about. Ka Yep. So that's the mana and the narrative. The importance of knowing your own dignity and holding on to that. And that comes out of being able to deal with your tomokana stuff, but also knowing your story and what the kaupapa is about, being very clear on that. Leadership strategies. So I've already alluded to some of this already. Symbolic. So this is where the artifacts and symbolism comes in. So this is where she arrived at Waitangi. It's a shame that it's in black and white. I couldn't find a colour one. And you'll see that the Pou Whenua is the flag, or there's the flag there, the haki, and then the Pou Whenua that's holding the flag. That became the leading figure of moving forward. So when they saw that moving, everyone gathered around it and started walking. Whereas at the hapua, it was her and her moko. But as they progressed through these symbolisms, these artifacts started participating, and they then captured the story of what the purpose is about. So when we think about leadership, we think about how we communicate stories, how we pass on the narrative that's going on. So the land was the call, the capture cry, not one more anchor, but the physical features that captured those stories was the Pou Whenua. As I've mentioned before, this idea of Pou Whenua is like my mode arco that I've got. One of my arcos I've got is a Pou Whenua. And the Pou Whenua is about the reclamation, the capturing of land, the restoration of land, the dealing with injustices and so forth. And so this idea of walking down the nation was in a symbolic way and in a metaphoric way and possibly in a prophetic way is saying no more land is going to be taken. And in fact, we want to retrieve our land and our whenua back to us. Other symbolisms that came into the play were the symbolisms of leadership and the symbolic elements of leadership. So you saw her wearing a korowai, a kakahu kiwi. As I already mentioned, they had the Pou Whenua. You incorporated karakia, which embodied the purpose, embodied the whakapapa, and embodied kind of these national images. And I remember, and some of us older ones will remember this quite well, when we saw this moving through, particularly over the Harbour Bridge. It was the first time mass hikoi over the Harbour Bridge. I don't even think the Auckland Marathon had started yet by then. But yeah, so it was awesome. So the importance of symbolism in your development and leadership to tell stories. Movement was done by design. They had a single issue. It was framed in a time period, and it was journey based. So there was an architect around what they were doing. It wasn't just about going off and meeting at Wellington. There's an intentionality around the movement of the hikoi and what was happening behind it. They were focused on one issue. Let's get down to Wellington in a month's time and let's journey together. The campaign was built on meeting at each town, meeting at the maraes, and telling the story and the purpose of why they're gathering. And so the earlier photo we saw of the just leaving the marae to Hapua, a very small group, but by the time they got to Wellington, you had this 5,000 odd people. Relational and organisation and its organised state. As I've said already before, hui were held on the marae. It was to persuade people. It was to recruit new carriers for the Pou Whenua. It was to gather signatures for the petition that they finally laid, and it was to bring unity. And so there was a lot of talking, a lot of conversations happening, a lot of discourse between Whina Cooper and her rōpu, Whina and the media and other ministers and local, regional and national government politicians and so forth. But it was organised in a way that would get a hearing when they got down to Wellington. And to do that, they also employed a media strategy. So they didn't let the media twist their narrative. They kept reiterating. And if you ever have an opportunity to do media training, where the media just wants a soundbite and wants to do their own thing, they developed a particular soundbite to get across very clear. Hence the catch cry, not one more acre. You can't really twist that around, not one more acre. Enforcing statement that they would say into the media. So they had daily visibility that's created a national story. Both images and human narratives were about persuading the population as much as possible through speeches and media engagement to shift the public opinion around justice and injustice issues for land and Raupatu land grievances and so forth. And then the last part there is the process of a strategy of leadership was petitioning places of power, challenging places of power, and ultimately this was about the government. At Parliament, they presented a memorial of right, and this was a mass petition that they gathered 60,000 signatories for it. They presented it to the Minister of the Day, which was about translating the moral authority into political pressure. They wanted some actions to happen to move legislation and government policy of the time in regards to mana whenua issues and relationships. Okay. That's the impact of her strategic leadership. The impact and legacy, and I've alluded to this a little bit earlier, land matters now became on the national, this is that's from the southern side towards the cathedral, looking back over to the Parliament building. And this was on the news now. Through this land march, land issues and justice issues, mana motuhake, te whakaputinga, te treaty o Waitangi, became part of the national agenda. Not necessarily say that the Crown or the media are in favour of it, but because we now had such a big profile, and Whina Cooper became a large profile until she passed away in 1994. Yeah, you just couldn't get away from it because that theme was always tied to until she passed. As I mentioned, in October, concurrently at the same time, the Waitangi Tribunal was formed. And up until that time, grievances could be heard to the tribunal, and subsequent other protest movements started as well. And as I've said, this land march to Hikoi became the blueprint for later kaupapa, like Bastion Point, foreshore and seabed, Te Reo, yeah, a whole number of others. That was a legacy of building hope. It empowered Māori to have a voice in the public space, whereas they left normally in the past at Waitangi Day, not much coverage, and on our marae, but this really shifted the whole space. And here are some of my references. So these are the ones that I referred to. And I'll tell you how I actually got all this soon when we're finished. He pātai, questions and answers. Copy. And I'll just take this off, Josh.
Man, so cool. I've got no question. I was just saying it was awesome.
So that's it. You to do that in 15 minutes. So the Q&A part is really just for us. I'll ask some questions. So you did ask this last week, there, Leonie. What are we doing for this? So that's, yeah. You put a bit of pressure on me. So thank you very much. Sorry.
Sorry. Oh, and it's a PowerPoint, eh?
Yeah.
Great. Fantastic.
Yeah, we're going to need to do a PowerPoint.
Right.
Now, you will see that the handout and the marking rubric that I've developed use those headings. It's on here. And just keep it like I've put a bit more pages in there, but you don't have to have that many pages. You could just have like I've done one for each heading, and then I just put down some things that I found. Now, this is how I did it. I had I had three people that I was thinking of doing. So I had Lieutenant Colonel Peter Awatiri from the Māori Battalion. I had Whina Cooper, and I also had Willie Apiata in my head. So I had someone that I know and who's current, alive, and another one who I had done some research on when I was looking at Canon Wihuata, who was the padre for Peter Awatiri when Peter Awatiri was the colonel, and also Peter Awatiri was the man that informed Dr. Peter Sharples in relationship to the Maurako, the Whare Tūtaua Aotearoa. That's how it's part of his PhD stuff in regards to developing a platform for revitalisation of te reo. He consulted Peter Awatiri as part of that process. And hence where now we've got the Whare Tūtaua Aotearoa. But I remember Dame Whina Cooper on the Paul Holmes show, where she really had Paul Holmes under her little finger in the way she was able to talk with him. Now, this is how I did it. Once I had decided what I wanted, I did a general search online for information. And then I opened up ChatGPT. I downloaded the Ngapo framework. And I also referenced the Wayfinder that Barclay Kerr, Hoturoa, and others, because I actually used those two as my primary resource information to develop the leadership framework that I wanted to explore. I was looking at, and so I I dropped in. Please provide for me a 5-point PowerPoint identifying the leadership, and I just wrote in what those were that I had there. So I downloaded what I wanted to get out of it, and then I just proceeded to edit it after that, and so forth. Okay. So you have to find someone first, and hopefully it's someone that you know, or it's part of your own whakapapa, or someone that you're interested in, or have experienced, and then you particularly around the any of the AI stuff, human initiated. Let the human feed it in. Don't just chop in something and it all spills out, because it does become quite obvious that you haven't put anything in there. But what we'll be doing is the matrix or the rubric that I've got here. It's pretty much the same thing. I've got the tomokana and some areas around organizational development and formation of skills and traits. I've got the R tier in relationship to relationship building. That's a human dynamic component, team design, and then I've just got a little schedule across. How does this work? Little thing. You'll see it when it pops up. Okay. On the page. Okay, Patai. Patai. Questions?
More comment. Make sure you humanize it, because man, you can tell when it's GP when it's a chat thing, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
But
Yep.
it is a good tool.
Yeah, it's just a tool. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a tool. Whānau. So I know some whānau don't even like touching that, but it is a really good tool. It is a tool, but just don't freak out on it.
Yeah. So the types of things that I might be asking, we get into our Q&A part, is I might ask questions, or we might explore questions around things like, in your research, were there times that the character became evident in a both positive or negative situation? And this is why I ended up not doing Peter Awatiri, because his end of a lifetime was quite tragic. And knowing the group that we've got amongst us, I didn't want to get into that too much. But yeah, there was trauma from his post-war space and his inability to deal with his anger. And I can attribute that straight to his World War II and the stuff that I researched in other areas on the front line. Yeah, he had a burden for our people, and yeah, that's why I didn't use him in the end. Yeah. Does anyone know who Peter Awatiri is? Donna Awatiri's dad? Yeah, yeah. When he came back from World War II, he did a kawe mate. So he spent 2 years going around the country, and all the soldiers that died in World War II, the Māori soldiers that passed away, he performed kawe mate for all of them. 2 years, 2 year process around the country for all the tribes, all of them.
I didn't know that.
Huh?
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
Yep. That was part of them coming home. Yeah. He died in prison in his later life. Crime of passion. But yeah. And it's interesting when you think about leadership, because John Tamahere is the same in the sense of sometimes a family member will do something, and that next generation or a sibling will try to restore the mana of the whānau by their community service. And I think Donna Awatiri was like that in her early years. There was this process of her dad was such a influential figure, and possibly, and I can't, this is just amongst us, possibly the shame of what he did in the later years of his life, that became a catch cry for her to try to restore the mana of her family, and particularly for her dad. John Tamahere, his brother, was accused of murder in the 90s. Well, it might be late 80s, 90s, and in some sense, you see him in the way he served the community in Te Whānau Waipareira and West Auckland, and all this is sometimes the legacy is actually other members of the family try to lift up and uphold and restore. There's this restorative process that goes on. Yeah. Okay.
Do you think that maybe Donna's one, though, was more along the lines of not shame, but of, if you think about the things that happen in war and the things her father would have seen,
Yep.
trying to get that story out, and I just don't think it would have been about shame. I think it would have been more about restoring him and like telling the story about what those kind of things, the impact it can have on people.
Yep. Yep.
I don't know.
Yeah, this is where it's I think one of the reasons why we talk about the tomokana a lot, and we cycle back to that. But sometimes there are stories that we're not realizing we're holding creep up on us, and then something will happen, and all of a sudden we're triggered, and then we react in a whole. So this idea of reflecting and working through stuff and being humble enough to go, I'm not squared away all the time. I don't have everything perfect all the time, or whatever. or life circumstances can throw a curveball, um, that all of a sudden there's things in the past that might pop up and wham, like, oh, where'd that come from? So this idea of this renewing of your mind and keeping short accounts and being accountable what's going on, because you don't know what the stories are of the people, and that's part of this tui fixture of what a leader is about. This weaving people, tui ki runga, tui ki raro, tui ki roto, tui ki waho. This whole process of leadership is about weaving people together, and sometimes the narratives are a bit disjointed, and there's friction there, and time, this ongoing building was eventually, case an example, Maturata and her at Whina in those early years, or those early days of the walk. By the time we got to one, there was, and there were a whole lot of other things that came up. Um, that kind of makes sense, this ability to weave people together. Yeah. Um, you may want to think about in regards to the projects that you're doing, or the tasks that you might be doing in your workplace, is thinking about, are there symbolic things in your whare or your work in your office, or branding or imagery that need to be revitalized or readdressed, because they tell stories. So let's take, for example, Kāinga Ora and the journey that's been through over the last 15 years. It's just gone up and down. And so they rebrand it, and they change the name, they change the logos, and it's all about trying to tell stories and restore it. Whatuora, for example, is another one, the health department. So, and I already see people's heads shaking away, but all these adopting things like Te Reo is trying to give another narrative and another story. And it might not seem like a lot, but yeah, just be mindful of that when we're doing our own spaces of what those imageries and stuff look like. Knowing your
I'm
purpose,
always arguing that.
carry on.
Sorry, I was just going to say I'm always arguing about how my job they use, so the mission statements and that they use all te reo and that, but when it actually comes to having manaki for our clients and that, it's just full of lies.
Yeah.
And I'm always arguing, why do you use our language? Use your own language, because you're making a mockery of ours when you're trying to say manakitanga, and you don't even give manakitanga to our clients.
Yeah. Yes, that's the power of words, eh? And particularly the understanding and the expectation that sits behind it. And if those expectations aren't aligned, and this is all part of that weaving together, and you're standing on the atia, a take's been laid down, and now you've got as a leader, both as one who's laying down the take, but also one who's receiving it. So as she moved from Te Hapua, she had to build up these whānau and whanangatanga links through the storytelling and the artifacts that they were taking down in order to bring unity in regards to understanding of expectations, and unity of vision and purpose and so forth, and how we use words and what is used and so forth. So, yeah. Figuring out also that there are going to be trade-offs, and you have to work out what's the trade-offs that you're happy to have in order that you can get your mission across whilst not losing anything from the central message that you might be trying to achieve, or the purpose that you're trying to achieve. One of the things that I've noticed working in a government department of 23,000 people is that you have these professional egos. And some people, their ego is so high that even though when they know they're wrong, they still won't admit they're wrong, and they just keep going on down with the purpose of what they're doing. Anyone else around them says, if you just said no, we're going to can it. I'm sorry, this was a wrong. No, they just keep going. Spend a whole lot of money, thousands of dollars, going down a thing that's actually not working and it's hurting people. Um, and so this facade, this mask that people wear to look professionally competent. We can't do anything to make us look like we're unprofessional or I'm not competent or I don't know. Um, so one of the things I think Whina was good about, she was able to draw people in to help her cause. Um, not necessarily having all the answers, but she had a purpose. And the strategy there for her was how do I bring people in? How do I hold to that main kaupapa? Because there were trade-offs, but stuck to the same message, the primary message that she was doing. Other things we need to consider when we're developing our teams and the organizations, and for her case, how do you balance kaumātua authority with rangatahi operational leadership? Now, that could be in regards to a organization like what developed with her group, or it could be within a professional organization, particularly if you're wanting to bring people on. It's the thing that I can continually think about as a pastor in our church. I'm really wanting to see our youth participate and own the place as much as possible. But I've got these older folk hanging around, you know. And it's funny because sometimes, well, some of them anyway, some of the older folk actually help us survive because they've got farms and they pay for kill a sheep for us and all those types of things. And so it's being realistic with the expectations that come with that. But I still have to weave these things together. I still have to listen and hear and build up the storytelling. Hence why we've got our 4 pillars: know, grow, go, and bow and being, and all these types of stuff. What's your measurable outcomes? What are you trying to achieve? Are they measurable? Are they time specific? Are they achievable? And are some of them aspirational? And it's been clear on what those are and what they could look like. So, for example, just from what we've talked today, one of the expectations of the program is that you will do something either in your professional capacity or, like the youth up here, they'll develop a community project that they'll execute at summertime. Applying all the things that we've talked about here and some of the strategies that Fiona Cooper had, some of the strategies that you'll bring up. So you'll all, through the case studies, part of doing the case study stuff is what will happen is that all of us will then have these smorgasbord of different kits and different lenses that they've looked at leadership and the influence of leadership and the weaving and all that type of stuff. And you'll be able to go, oh, that's quite a nice idea. I might try that. And you start pulling these together. Kōrero, takuroro, ka ora ai te iwi. From your basket and from my basket, together we can eat and participate. And the family, the tribe will survive. Yeah. So, influence of symbolism, understanding egos, which comes back to the tomokana, the humility space, ngā kaumahaki and all those types of things. But you also have to think about trade-offs. What is detrimental to your purpose in the kaupapa, and what okay, this is actually, I don't have to fight the white. How do you balance the kaumātua authority with rangatahi operational leadership and everything else in between? That's quite a crucial one. How do you work those two activities together? Because sometimes the rangatahi, oh, that's just the whole generation. Then they're gone, they're past it now. They know what they're talking about. Get into AI or crypto or whatever else they're going on about, and all the old ones. What? So, but there is a place for each to play, and we just got to work out what that looks like. And then have your measurable outcomes. Okay. Questions? Please do ask them. What I'll do is that slide that I did up, I'll probably do a group email to send it out to you, plus the sheets that I've done up. So at least then you can see what I've both regards to the handout, the marking rubrics, and yeah, the slides. So okay.
That's probably more of a comment. So when you're talking about the kaumatua with the rangatahi and operational leadership for them and how that worked.
Yeah.
So like the word that drops into my heart is around that scripture that talks about the old and the younger generations and them two working together.
Yeah.
So are you looking for biblical references? Because I'm really visual, when you're talking in that space about the kaumātua of the rangatahi, then my mind quickly flips to, oh, actually, there's a scriptural reference. You're not looking for,
How
no.
so this part here, this process, this case study is really an opportunity for you to dig into someone to possibly go, here is someone I can use as a mentor through my research. And I am happy for folk like what I've done here. I've done very generic leadership spaces, but if you're wanting to press into character formation, some of the biblical stuff like we've already talked about already, scriptural references, um, like you could like if I did Canon Wihuata, I would probably look at things like the passage we took when Jesus started in his young days, that he grew in stature and favor of God and man. I probably would use that with Canon Wihuata because he's got a long legacy. His father and his grandfather were ministers as well, and he's also from my hapu, so it's real nice. And he's wrote a whole lot of songs, just like. But there's a lot you can tie in there, and it's not to say you can't do that with any other leaders. So I'm happy for that, and I would encourage those who, if their wisdom from the Psalms and the Proverbs that talk about leadership in regards to character formation or the application of that, yeah, I'm happy for folk to weave it through. Whereas others, they will just go tutu to Māori and just think about a Māori worldview and from an Indigenous perspective, thinking about what leadership looked like. Like I know Ngāwa, because that's his strong flavour, and that's okay too. Um, yeah. So I know, like Joshua, for example, he said he'll go, Dad, can I use you? No, I'm just joking. But you can use me if you want to. Paroni, you got any questions, brother? Or is this, are you all right with what we've talked about?
No, all good. I
Yeah,
understand.
cool, man. Awesome. Yeah, so hopefully by the examples that I showed earlier or talked about earlier, so I had, who did I say? Whenekupa, Pita Awatere, and Willie Apiata. But you've also got Jesus himself and the way he did things and how he engaged with leadership and so forth. You've got the prophets. You've got both male and female figures in regards to leadership in the church. Aquila and Priscilla, Mary and Martha, Lazarus. You've got a whole range of yeah. So it's really just an opportunity for you to go, what I'm learning on my ngapu, can I see that reflected through in people? Or you may find other skill sets that they bring to bear, which is cool too, because this is about a shared understanding of the breadth and scope of what leadership could look like for us. So the key things, as I said, I'll be looking for, which is on the handout that is you identify a leader and the environment that she gave leadership to. So you need to be able to talk quickly about the context. The traits and skills. So what were the things that she brought to bear and the skills she needed to, like in this case, Whina Cooper needed to employ. So your person, we're thinking about that. It's okay if you don't know them by detail, per se, but there are some references in that can actually draw that out for you, which is quite helpful. Team leadership, how did that function? How did that work? What did that look like? What were used to help develop that? What was the relationship between kaumātua and rangatei and how that functions? And then we get into more of the whare space. So the team leadership is really the operational level, what they did and how they did it to get to that place. Whereas the strategic leadership is thinking about the strategies they employed, and that's really the whare stuff moving forward. How do they orientate themselves, understanding context, defining the kaupapa, stop land loss was pretty much simple. Stop, no more. We are not going to sell any more acres. And in the Wayfinder book that Hoturu Kerr and others wrote, this part here, they call it, there's an island that's calling us, the destination in the sailing of our waka. So what is that destination? Where are they going? What's the purpose? And so thinking through that strategically, because it's not necessarily a straight line to this sailing. You have to do some ports and tacks and so forth, depending on what the weather conditions are. But you need to know what's the island that's calling us, what's the destination or the purpose. And the employment of symbolism, kahu, pauwhenua, haki. These anchor identity. What are those things that you're anchoring? And you could think about your workplace and I'll do a bit of a reflective space on there. Okay, what's actually the culture and the anchoring points that they have to communicate purpose and vision and moving forward? The deepening practices, the things that go deeper from a strategic perspective. What are the battle rhythms? What are the emotions? In a workplace, it might be, I call them O groups or our meeting times. Do you have them at the start of the week or at the end of the week? We would often have ours on a Friday and say, okay, this is what's coming up next week. So when we come on Monday, we're rolling straight away. We already know everything's set. Whereas sometimes if you have it on the first thing on a Monday, it takes a little while to roll up and ramp up because people like to have a cup of tea on it. And so already straight away on Monday morning's gone. Yeah. So what are the daily rhythms that you need to sustain, both wairua and discipline? And the destination. Arriving at Parliament, what were the things that were needed to measure the success or not of the kaupapa? And then lastly, thinking about are there transferable lessons that you can take to yourself and your own leadership styles and the impact. Okay. So those, we've got 3 weeks over November at this stage. The week before that, we're on study break, 3rd of November. So it gives you time to put things together. But that will be the expectation, is to develop a slide that we can share, and Josh will help you share that once you put it up, go through it, and then ask some questions. And can I encourage you to ask questions of each other when we come to those presentations? Because sometimes there are things that you go, ooh, I've never thought of leadership from that perspective, or that was an interesting insight. Can you expand that a little bit? But we don't want too big surprises for each other. And what I will be doing is from the matrix or this rubric, I might just ask the question that moves you from a 2 to a 3 or a 3 to a 4 or up. And the question might be just that you already might know it, but you just haven't articulated it. So I'll ask the question. Yep, and then boom, you've got that. Yeah, so basically it's from weightings from 1 to 4, and you'll see them where they fit within that when I send it out. Again, just a tool to guide you through the process and develop it. But we don't really have much opportunity to think about and observe and reflect on someone else's leadership. And so it's a good time just to dig in a bit. And again, it's not being about critical of them or the people or the time that they might find themselves. It's just they're saying, okay, what can I learn from a reflective? So it's a critical engagement, but more about ourselves, not them, or the other people. So that makes sense? Yeah. So what I might do is in the early weeks of September, I might get used to as part of the September reflective part. And thanks for everyone that's been doing those up till the end of this month. Looking really awesome. So I might get you to identify the leader that you're going to do your case study on, just so you start tracking it out and collecting your thoughts around it. I don't really want you to come up to the 3rd of November and you've got a week to go and you have to present something. Just give some thought about who you might be presenting on. I'm hoping to have Carla here on the 1st of September. Ooh, down LinkedIn. And going to get her to talk about her projects that she's doing. I just need to get a hold of her. And then Greg and Leonie are presenting to us, Leonie is on the 27th of October. That's around the environments, the center of gravity, and what that means with regards to leadership and leading organizations from a strategic perspective.
Did she know about that?
Yes, she did.
Oh, trust
way
me,
back, way back. Yeah. So Carla will be sharing around leading teams, and Greg and Leonie is around environments. So that's really about the funny space of how do you move an organization or integrated organizations, or because they've worked quite a bit at a higher level of leadership, and some of the pitfalls and struggles and joys and sufferings and long nights of prayer for us. Okay, team, that's the presentation. That's the kind of example of what we're looking for. I hope those that haven't been here will be okay. But we have to get some feedback from them. Kapai? Tātai?
He Pato, so does anyone else already know who their person is going to be that they're doing their case study on? Oh, good, I'm not the only one.
So in the reading list that I handed out beginning of the year, so there's a whole lot of resources there that could be a starting point. And I've tried to have quite a diverse range of readers and contributors, both male and female. Yeah. So even some of the authors that are writing some of the materials, like Mason Jury, for example, could be a good character, or Pahenare Tate is another one. I think his book on Te Puna Iti I Te Ao Marama, which is quite recent. So not only necessarily the book itself or the resources that they may lead to, but it could be because some of them are bibliographies or biographies of different leaders. But I might just give you a little nudge. I've tried to bring in some tribal ones. So, for example, what I've been putting up on the messenger page is trying to give some lenses from other people. So you saw the Ngāpuri, that page, that one I put on in regards to Kepa. It's funny, because he's part of our marae, but he's the leader of Ngāti Rihia, which is Te Tii and all around there. And they're doing a lot of different stuff. And so it's just trying to find someone that you go, oh yeah, can I learn? Kapai. You right, Josh? Yep. Awesome. Joanne, kapai. Pātai? No, good. Regina? Who's going to do Donald Trump? Oh man, that'd be funny.
I'll do them.
That's a
And
case.
I'll leave Dore with Winston Peters, eh?
Because that's the other way I could do it. I could actually come up with a list and say pick off the list. But for this year, I just want you guys to with what we've got. But depending on how it goes, I might do that next year. Just do up a list of people and just pick one. Regarding your reflections, your journals, how are you finding that? I think you've done two now. Yeah.
So I don't know if I went off track. Did you read mine? I think
Yeah.
I waffled. Am I on track?
So the journal is just to give you space to think about what's going on in here. Yeah, and to try to ground something that you've learnt from that week. And so I don't mind if it goes, as long as you can click your thoughts and pull it together. Yeah, so it's just a process to pause, and we talked about this in the last week at Whiti Ora, not Whiti Ora, Te Whiti o Te Rangi Marae, where this one of the stands for Ngā Pau is whakatā or whakanoa, it's rest. And the journals or the reflective process is really about that resting, taking time to rest, to reflect on how's my leadership going, how's my formation going, because we don't do that a lot. We just move from one task to the other. Because what can easily happen is as we move into the ātea and whare phases of doing, we tend to focus on leadership external and what's happening around us, as opposed to what's happening inside. And it can actually be easy. We default to that. And so we blame the other, or the other becomes the optics, rather than going, why am I reacting that way? Is there a story that I'm still telling that's been triggered? And so that's the journal part is really just trying to encapsulate and get us thinking around that. So it's heavily weighted towards the tomokana spacing. That's why we do it. We do it over the whole year, because I think we're in this process of reflecting all the time. And if we're good at our leadership, we'll do that all the time. The disciplines of that will grow in it. And that can be as simple as something happens at work that really sets you off. So when you get home, as part of your decompression, or what I used to do in the army, I'd come home. Part of getting out of my uniform was my decluttering or decompressing the issues that happened, and they just gave me half an hour just to kind of reorientate back to my family and the boys and Jose without trying to take all that stuff and then apply it and lay it on them unjustly. So that's the journal part, is just thinking through that. Can we also think about our coaches and mentors? I know some of you have got professional supervision. So if you start thinking about what that could look like, because part of the summer project, and particularly as we move out of spring, near the end of spring into the Raumati period, you're going to have 4 of your 10 reflections reflecting on what you're doing with your supervisor or your mentor or your coach contribution. They don't necessarily have to write something in there, but there are things that if you've had some discussions that are helpful to your leadership formation and the ongoing growth of that, then there's that second page is about that. It's okay. What have you agreed to do to move forward in that process? It's about the actions, the doing bit. Yes, Joanne?
Okay, so that would be like, so every month our service manager does a thing with us. They call it te arapiki, and it's like what so like what kind of things are we doing, like courses and that we have running through our job to be able to either get pay rises, or we might do leadership and like peer support or PSA, but it's helping us to move up the ladder. Is that?
She's
Yes,
talking
it
about
could be.
personal development.
Yeah, yes, it could be. So what we've got with the reflective journals is we've got 10 slots. Basically, the first of each month is to submit it by then. Yeah. And that's the tomokana part of your formation. It's going, okay, being ready, prepared. How do I react? Why am I reacting? What are the triggers? Have I dealt with something? Is it dealing with the past? And so that's the reflective journal then. Or an observation of leadership, both good or bad, that you've seen in your workplace or wherever. That you go, actually, there's a lesson in there. I just need to figure out what it is. And you just reflect on that. And you might go around the Mulberry Bush and Waipura Forest and go past all the mountains of Ngāpuhi and hide around the place, ki wiwi, ki wawa, and then come back to a particular conclusion for your own application. When it comes to the 4 coaching, mentoring, supervisor space, it's still about the application of your leadership, but the process of what I'm wanting you to do is engage with someone else to help ground what your actions will be in the moving forward. So there's an intentionality around my lessons are causing me to apply it this way. And now, and this part of the tūhonga pokapa, when we talk about tātai hono as our support networks, you both got professional networks and non-professional networks that enable us to be more efficient and better practitioners. And does that make sense? So it's not necessarily about, I do this course to get this pay rise or go up the ladder. It's more about what is it causing me to do in an applied way, that lesson that I've learned. And now I'm asking you to, those 4 times with your supervisor or whoever, is to employ someone else in that reflective process. You may come up with the same conclusions, but that second page is going, I've spoken to my supervisor or my coach around this. As a result of that conversation, we're now going to apply this over the next month. And here are my actionable steps moving forward.
Okay, I don't have a supervisor then, or a mentor.
Yes, that's why I was asking you about to find one.
Well, how am I going to do that? What do you mean?
You
So,
can
for
ask
example, the team that we have here in Kaikwe for Betsy, Paraone, and Joshua, the youth coordinator is their coach and mentor, because we're using this course to help develop them to run the youth. And Caleb becomes that role in that process. So what might that have you got a workplace supervisor? Mm. Don't they require you at work to have a supervisor?
External supervision,
External
sis.
supervision?
No,
You
no.
can ask for it. Say you've got mental health and you need external supervision. You're at risk. I'm only
I think
joking,
that,
but you can.
no, they think that the clients are more at risk when they're speaking to me. They need supervisors.
Yeah.
You can like Nanny, Fire Jenny, and that are supervisors. Nan could supervise. That sort of supervision. She would be excellent. Why are you looking like that? Humble yourself and ring her.
I might speak to Whina, actually.
Yeah.
Mm.
So what this is doing is asking you whether it's because I know some of you have a professional capacity that this happens anyway. So I don't want to recreate the wheel if you're doing it. Just incorporate the discussion within that process. Yeah. However, so that's the professional side of that tātai ono. You're employing someone to help you track how you're going, and particularly in the workplace one where it's a external supervisor, making sure that your work practices are safe, that you're safe, that your practices are safe and current and so forth. Now, in the non-professional space, like I have for our team here, is we've got a coach and mentor that are also going to meet with them with the objective of talking through the application of what you're discussing. So now, because we can't do this in isolation, one of the things that Whina Cooper was really good at was the drawing of people together through the storytelling. And so through her building the networks and the relationships, she was able to bring people in that she won over to actually do the task and participate in the mission that she was. So sometimes for us, we need to do that as well, is be able to have someone that we can bounce ideas off and share with that brings a bit of a sanity check to what we're doing. You know what I mean? And or you might think an idea that I want to try this, and it could be something crazy, but you just talk to your coach or mentor or your supervisor about it and go, I'm considering this. What do you think? And all I'm requiring on the second page of that reflective sheet is that you've spoken to someone and you've identified your actions. It's not theory. So you're not going to talk about something and then it just sticks stuck in your head. It needs to move to actions, applied learnings. Otherwise, it's just theory. Bye-bye. Is that all right, Jane? Is that making sense?
Hang on. So, sis, Barry annoyed me because he's not doing his mahi, triggered me to do something that was negative. I had to go and talk to my supervisor about it. We identified what the issue was, went through the process about what I was going to do. Each time that issue rose. So that's a real life example at the moment. And so with every time I feel a trigger, I've got to quickly check myself, and then I'm also looking at the patterns. Do I actually need to be speaking to him again? Because that's what I wasn't doing. I was allowing it to fester in me, which then resulted in me backstabbing him or Tamir. It's really good now.
And the crazy part about it is sometimes people don't even realize they're doing it. It's just in
Yeah, that's right.
But we
Yeah.
get into the habit on the Āti to blame others because they're laying down the take. We know they're not even they're oblivious of it even happening.
But I had to also acknowledge that I was part of the problem in regards to picking up what he was responsible for.
Yeah.
And so that was the whole
Yeah, it's good.
supervision stuff.
Yeah. Yep. So we've done 2. We've got 8 to go. Of that 8, 4 of them are to be with your coach, mentor, and or supervisor, external supervisor. And you'll see the questions that are in that second half of that sheet. You'll just see what it's in there and just work it. But it's just about application, yeah. Just like that was a good example there, Regina. Thank you. Yeah, very helpful.
That's unusual because usually I've got to translate her language.
It just means I'm maturing, sister.
Are there any stories going on here that we need to be aware of?
Should I tell them the story? No.
Of what? The fry bread.
When the Taimai you were so Regina was talking to our homeless community, and she was talking like she's got a very political sort of way of speaking, you know, not like how our homeless community would speak.
I'm articulate. That's what she's trying to say.
Yeah. And so she's talking to them, and they're looking at her like, what the hell is she saying? And then she looks at me and asks me to translate it. So I translated it into normal language. And they go, oh, why didn't she say that in the first place?
I was trying to read a Bible verse, Rewai and Te Reo, and it went like this. Tēnā tautau, tēnā tātou, tēnā koutou tātua. I said it very badly. And so it was a really good place of learning. So I learned that I shouldn't try and be something I'm not, and stop trying to look like I know it all, because that I was just trying to sound and look really pretty. And so there's a bit of humbling that took place, and the whānau was so respectful. No one laughed. Hey, my sister. They just all, because I built that relationship, and they all felt somewhat sorry for me. Shut up, you.
And then she walked towards me, and I was looking at the ground, I go, what the hell was that? And she goes, I know. Because she can speak it. But yeah, it was a thing to show our homeless community that, the sister isn't perfect. That's what it was about, sis? None of us are perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. Grace, Grace and humility and love. And I think that's one of the things that's the struggle with current leadership, is everyone wants to do things about justice and restoration, and those are very hard and harsh, and so a lot of blame that goes out. But with justice is truth, but there's also grace and humility and love. Yeah, they're a lost art, I think, in regards to the architect of developing leadership, particularly if you're weaving people together, learning how to weave people together and draw them in. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. It's great. Is Greg making a cup of tea? Oh, he's gone to his hui.
It's gone to the hui. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, it's good to see him. We had a good time the other week.
Indeed.
I was shattered though afterwards. Man, she sucked a lot out of me.
Good. He's going to be applying some of that soon.
Yeah. Yeah, it was good. Okay, whānau. I as I said, tonight was the giving an example. So what I'll do is I'm actually going to send out an email Josh will save the slide, whatever this was, what do you call it? The video of it. So, and I'll do up an email which I'll have the slides of what I presented, plus the marking rubrics and the handout sheet, just so you see what I've got kind of in the background to help me deliver what I was doing. But more importantly, the slides, if you want to, you can just paste and cut. Obviously, you're not going to be doing Whina Cooper. That's what you can't do anymore. But you've got an idea what you could use, so you can just use that as a template. And again, it's the learnings that you pick up from the person that you're picking. Okay. All right. So that's helpful for you, Leonie, and what you were asking last week? Yeah, good. Yep. The key thing for this is about what have you discovered? Are there things that are applicable? Go, man, I've learned a lot off this particular person, and I can apply it to my own life. Like for me, I like the way Whina Cooper weave together both young and old to participate. Again, I think that's another lost art for our modern forms of leadership. When I look at different groupings that are around at the moment, and yeah, seems like some of our kaumātua and queer are getting pushed aside, and just the mana, because it's all about mana enhancing things, and our values. So with that, what we'll do is, if there's no more questions, we'll do that. Josh will record, we'll save it. I'll send the link out all on video tomorrow, with those slides and so forth. Okay. Josh, would you like to close in prayer if there's no other kōrero?